Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. In this video, I'm going to be discussing the news that broke, really, Sunday night, that Boris Johnson was going to introduce legislation to completely tear up the Northern Ireland Protocol. Indeed, anything to do with the withdrawal agreement that he doesn't like. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So yeah, this has blown up a bit. So I remember Prime Minister's questions last Wednesday, and I had commented on this on some video or other, that in between Keir Starmer asking his questions and Ian Blackford asking his, a Conservative MP stood up and asked about unfettered access between Northern Ireland and Great Britain, because as things stand, so Northern Ireland is going to remain in the EU's customs union. The rest of the UK is not. So we're going to diverge. Now, what that means is, therefore, there needs to be paperwork, there needs to be customs declarations, there needs to be some checks at the border between Northern Ireland and Great Britain for, certain things to pass between them. And for quite a lot of the time since then, even though that's in the withdrawal agreement, the legally binding portion as well, Boris Johnson kept denying it, says, no, there won't be any paperwork at all. There won't be any checks or anything like this. More recently, they've started to announce, oh yeah, there will be paperwork. Oh yeah, there'll be checks as well. Oh, and there's going to be some fairly hefty fees as well. So not exactly unfettered access. So this Conservative MP was going, so we need unfettered access between Northern Ireland and Great Britain like you promised. Are you going to make sure this is the case? To which Boris Johnson replied in Parliament last Wednesday, yes, I'm going to be introducing legislation to do that. Tory MP sits down looking very pleased with himself. And I commented, I said, well, I can understand, some legislation potentially being part of some solution. But at the end of the day, there isn't going to be unfettered access unless you are planning on keeping customs arrangements in the rest of the United Kingdom the same as in Northern Ireland, which means the same as in the EU, but that's not what you want. So how is domestic legislation going to do anything with an international treaty? Well, now we have our answer. Actually, we don't have our answer. We have what Boris Johnson wants us to think is the answer. That is that he is going to enact legislation that allows ministers to basically change aspects of the Northern Ireland Protocol that they do not like. And specifically, he's going to ensure that courts in this country, if things are taken there, which of course they will be, have to side with UK ministers. They cannot take, the international view. So effectively what Boris Johnson is saying is that if the EU doesn't play ball with him, he is willing to break international law. Does this mean that Boris Johnson is setting himself up to break international law? Now, of course, the news will have been rife with lots of people explaining the legal ramifications for this. And I've put a comment or two on Twitter myself. But really, I think what this is it's another puerile negotiating strategy. It's another futile bluff. And the reason I say this is because although there will genuinely be some hard right Tory MPs who don't understand the situation, who will be cheering this on, Boris Johnson has shown himself multiple times to be genuinely afraid of courts that will take action against him, both in this country and internationally. And there's another issue as well. So the Northern Ireland Protocol, like I say, it's not just British law. It was signed into British law by Boris Johnson and Conservative MPs. And specifically, they campaigned in last year's general election on that promise, on that documentation. So the idea that they should change a single word of it is outrageous because they stood on that as their main campaigning plank. So there's a mandate to stick to the letter of that agreement. But it's not just a matter of British law, which of course Parliament can change. It's a matter of international law. And if there's any interpretation to be had, it will not be had by British courts. It will be had by an international court, and that international court will be the European Court of Justice. And like I've said, I've said it before, Boris Johnson surely to goodness does not want the humiliation of having anything at all taken to the European Court of Justice. Because in Britain, Boris Johnson is getting across the idea that once we've left, and especially if we leave without a deal, it'll be bloody confusing for a lot of Brexiteers. that the European Court of Justice will not decide on any matters pertaining to Britain. But these people have not read the withdrawal agreement, because in the legally binding portion of the withdrawal agreement, there are issues for which the European Court of Justice will still decide. And the Northern Ireland Protocol is absolutely one of them. So if Boris Johnson actually does breach it, then that means that the case will be heard in the European Court of Justice. The government will be found in breach of the law. That will be deeply humiliating, because there'll be people in this country going, what? European Court of Justice? I didn't think we were... What's going on? What's happening, Boris? I don't think he wants that humiliation. And the other, the EU, of course, will surely know that this is not a credible threat either. Largely because of that, even though obviously they're irate at the moment, as I was when I first read it, and I'm sure that, is genuine as well as for their own public, because it's very serious to even suggest it. But it's much more damaging for the UK to even suggest it. Because first of all, let's just discuss the consequences if Boris Johnson were to genuinely break the law in this way. So first of all, the government will be taken to an international court. That is all there is to it. You break international law, and sometimes, powerful countries can sort of get away with things. We know that, we have in the past. But in this particular case, well, one, the group taking us to court will be more powerful, and two, they're not going to let anyone get away with this. The peace process in Ireland will be strained, at least, potentially shattered, if the Conservatives do not rein in their moronic leader bloody quickly, if he genuinely tries to do it. If we persist, then the EU could... we know what happens, don't we? If a country is not behaving itself, if it's cocking a snoop at international law, what happens? We know what happens. We see it in the news often enough. You apply economic sanctions to that country until it falls into line. We know that happens. How do we feel about that happening to us? I know people joke, gallows humour type joke, that Brexit represents the UK being the first country in history to apply economic sanctions to itself. But we could have real economic sanctions applied to us by the EU, who will just say, well... And then that will reduce our trade even further. And bear in mind, it won't just affect trade with the EU. The EU apply international sanctions. It works in a very similar way to the US applying them. Lots of other countries will have to follow suit. And the United States, all this talk about the US trade deal. So let's have a look. If Joe, I nearly called him President Biden. Do not jinx it, goodness sake. If Joe Biden wins the presidential elections this November and he becomes president next January, he can kiss goodbye to a US trade deal. He will not countenance any talks with anyone who has jeopardised the peace process in Ireland. Not a cat in hell's chance. But okay, let's say Donald Trump wins it. Sort of the same thing. Donald Trump might not give a crap, and he may not care about the Irish lobby either. I don't know whether that is true. I can believe he won't give a crap, but Congress will. They've already said as much. And anything he tries to come up with, any deal he comes up with, Congress will block, and they've said they'll block it. Trump, can he really be asked to try and agree a deal that he knows is going to be blocked? It's just humiliation for him, and it's effort for him as well. Why would he bother? So he won't. It actually makes no difference who wins the election. We will not... There'll be no US trade talks at all. And in fact, we might end up with the US imposing economic sanctions on us as well. And I know I've said that, if Brexit goes really, really badly, that a lot of people might wake up from it. The scales may fall from the rise in large enough numbers that we can actually start moving towards, at the very least in the first instance, rejoining the customs union and starting back on the path towards sanity. But when I'm talking about potentially Brexit going so badly that people notice it, I didn't really expect economic sanctions to be applied to the UK by the two largest trading blocs in the world. Absolute madness. And then, of course, there's the wider implications. And this can potentially apply without us even breaking the law. Just threatening it There'll be countries looking at this right now and going, right, you negotiated this. Boris Johnson said this was a fantastic deal, oven-ready deal. He was pleased as punch with it. His own MPs voted for it to a man, woman and child, man-child. And now, less than a year later, they're reneging on it. Why would we spend months or years with some of our top negotiators negotiating a trade deal with these people if as soon as they decide it's not politically convenient for them, and there's always give and take in a trade deal, then they're just going to tear it up or ignore it? So what this does is it poisons our reputation still further around the world, because the rest of the world is looking at this and going, why would we want to trade with this person? Why would we want to negotiate with this person? They're not trustworthy. We are not trustworthy. Just threatening it makes us not trustworthy. So then you think, okay, so Phil, if it is just a negotiating strategy, which can be damaging enough in itself, you know, why is Johnson, you know, because Johnson at some point is going to put this legislation in quite soon, you would think. Doesn't that prove he intends to break the law? Bearing in mind, the legislation will not in itself be a breach of the Northern Ireland Protocol. As I understand it, I'm not a legal expert. As I understand it, what it would do is allow ministers to break the Northern Ireland Protocol. What it does is it changes British law so that certain bits of the legally binding withdrawal agreement are not so legally binding in Britain, but they are still internationally. Now, just because the legislation would allow a minister to breach the withdrawal agreement and not get told off by a British court, because that's essentially what it would do, doesn't mean that minister would do that. You know, it wouldn't stop a minister still complying with the international version, in which case there isn't a breach. It's just a waste of parliamentary time in trying to show that we're serious about reneging on the withdrawal agreement if the EU don't give us the deal that we're after. So I think that's what this is about. The EU will see right through it, and it's just going to be another bit of humiliation for Boris Johnson. It's a little bit like, I had to say, when in one of the papers it was reporting Boris Johnson as saying, if we don't have a deal in 38 days, then we're walking. I thought, well, there's a couple of things there. I mean, he said that before. He said for summer, if at the start of summer, if in like end of June, something like that, if it didn't look like there was good progress being made in talks, then we were going to stop those talks. That was official government policy. They'd stated it clearly several times. And then that date came and went. There was no suitable progress. Both sides admitted that. Did we stop talks? No, we didn't. And then the other part of it is, I mean, the very final Brexit talks start on the 28th of September and they finish, I think, on the 2nd of October. So, you know, that's way less than 38. In 38 days' time, the talks are done and dusted. Because although you can have a little bit behind the scenes, there are no more talks beyond the 2nd of October. So what he's basically saying is, after the very final round of talks, if we're not happy, then we're not going to have any more talks. It's like, no, we're not going to have any more talks because it's too late then. There are no more talks after the 2nd of October. But anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.